I always thought I was Maria Delgado's miracle baby, the daughter she got after 3 miscarriages, the one who made her whole again. But standing in my childhood bedroom at 29, holding my real birth certificate for the first time, I realized I wasn't her miracle at all. I was her secret. The document trembled in my hands. My name, Nora Elena Martinez. Not Delgado, Martinez. And under mother's name, a line that should have read Maria Delgado, was something else entirely. Isabella Martinez. Who the hell was Isabella Martinez? My legs gave out. I sank onto the floral bedspread Mom had picked out when I was 12, the same one she'd refused to let me change even as a teenager. It's perfectly good, mija, she'd always said. Why waste money? But apparently, she'd had no problem wasting money on maintaining a 29-year lie. I'd come home to Phoenix to help Mom pack for her move to assisted living. She'd been diagnosed with early-stage dementia 6 months ago, and her doctor said she needed more care than I could provide from my apartment in Denver. We'd spent the morning sorting through decades of accumulated life. Old photo albums, my report cards, her collection of ceramic angels. That's when I found the lockbox. It was shoved way back in her bedroom closet, behind winter coats that had no business existing in Arizona. The lock was broken, probably had been for years. Inside were documents I'd never seen before. My real birth certificate, adoption papers dated 3 days after my birth, and a letter in Mom's handwriting that made my blood turn to ice water. If Nora ever finds out the truth, I'll lose her forever. Isabella was weak. She couldn't handle being a mother, but I can. I will raise this baby as mine, and no one will ever know she came from someone else. This is what's best for everyone. Someone else. I wasn't Maria Delgado's daughter. I was some stranger's unwanted mistake, passed off like a hand-me-down coat. The worst part. The adoption papers weren't signed by Isabella Martinez. They were signed by Maria Delgado, as the adoptive mother, and by someone else entirely. A signature I didn't recognize. Someone who had the legal right to give me away, but not Isabella Martinez. Her signature was nowhere to be found. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. How's the packing going, mija? Don't throw away anything important. Important. Like the truth about my entire existence? I stared at that birth certificate until the letters blurred together. 29 years of bedtime stories about how wanted I was. How she'd prayed for me every night during those miscarriages. How I was her answered prayer, all lies. Every birthday cake. Every Mother's Day card I'd made in elementary school. Every time I'd told people how lucky I was to have such a devoted mom. It was all built on a foundation of deception. But here's what really twisted the knife. If Isabella Martinez was my birth mother, where was she now? Was she alive? Did she know where I was? Had she been looking for me all these years while Maria Delgado played house with her stolen daughter? Or had she willingly given me up to whoever signed those papers, never caring enough to see me again? I heard Mom's car in the driveway. She was back from her doctor's appointment, probably expecting to find me knee-deep in photo albums, reminiscing about our beautiful memories together. Instead, she was about to walk into the destruction of everything she'd built. I folded the birth certificate and slipped it into my back pocket. The letter went into evidence. Proof that the woman who raised me was either a kidnapper or a liar, maybe both. Her key turned in the lock. Nora? How's it going in there? I looked around the bedroom one more time. The floral bedspread, the ceramic angels, the photos of us at my high school graduation, my college graduation, my wedding to David 3 years ago. In every single picture, Maria Delgado looked like the proudest mother in the world. But she wasn't my mother at all. Fine, Mom, I called back, my voice somehow steady. Just finding some interesting things. Footsteps in the hallway, getting closer. 29 years of lies were about to come crashing down. Growing up, I was the perfect daughter. At least that's what everyone said. I got straight A's, never missed curfew, helped with Sunday dinners. While other kids rebelled, I spent weekends helping Mom organize her coupon collection and watching old telenovelas together. She'd stroke my hair and tell me I was her little angel, her greatest blessing. You saved me, mija, she'd whisper during the commercials. After losing those babies, I thought God had forgotten about me. Then you came along. The story never changed. 3 miscarriages between ages 32 and 35. Years of trying. Then, miraculously, me born healthy at Phoenix General Hospital on March 15th, 1995. 7 pounds, 2 ounces of pure joy, according to Mom. But here's what should have been a red flag. There were never any pregnancy photos, not one. When I got engaged to David, I asked Mom for pictures to put in our wedding slideshow. Every other bride had adorable photos of their parents glowing with pregnancy anticipation. Mom's response? Oh, mija, I was so sick with you. I looked terrible. Let's just use the hospital photos. Except there weren't any hospital photos either. No pictures of me as a newborn. Nothing until I was about 3 months old, suddenly appearing in perfectly staged portraits, like I'd materialized out of thin air. The camera broke, Mom would say, when I pressed. And we were so tired those first few months. Another red flag. No baby book. No record of my first word, first step, first anything. Mom claimed she'd been too overwhelmed to keep track, but she'd saved every report card, every art project, every certificate I'd ever received. How do you forget to document your miracle baby's milestones, but remember to keep a drawing I made in 2nd grade? And the biggest red flag of all, I looked nothing like her. Maria Delgado was short and round, with deep brown eyes and black hair that she'd kept in the same bob cut for 20 years. I was tall and lean, with green eyes and light brown hair that turned blonde in the summer. When people commented on it, Mom would laugh and say, "She gets it from her father, my father." Another mystery wrapped in contradictions. According to Mom, Roberto Delgado had been the love of her life. They'd met at a church dance when she was 19. He died in a car accident when I was 2. Too young to remember him, but old enough to miss having a dad. He would have been so proud of you, Mom always said, pulling out the same 3 photos of a handsome man with dark hair and brown eyes, who looked about as much like me as a stranger on the street. But I'd inherited his height, apparently, his love of reading, his stubborn streak. Convenient how all my non-Maria traits came from the conveniently dead father I couldn't question. The thing is, I believed it all. Why wouldn't I? When you're raised on a story, it becomes your truth. I grieved for the father I'd never known. I felt grateful for the mother who'd chosen to raise me alone, rather than remarry and risk dividing her attention. I was 25 when I first started wondering about extended family. David and I were planning our wedding, and I realized I had no relatives to invite. No grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, nothing. "What about your dad's family?" David asked. Mom's face went tight. They never accepted me. After Roberto died, they cut us off completely. Some people can't handle grief properly. "What about your family? Dead or estranged, mija? You know this. It's just been you and me against the world." But it wasn't just us against the world, was it? It was Maria Delgado against the truth, with me as her unwitting accomplice. Looking back now, I can see how carefully she'd constructed my entire reality. Every story designed to explain away inconsistencies. Every photo strategically chosen. Every question deflected with just enough emotion to make me feel guilty for asking. She'd been playing the long game for 29 years, and I'd been the perfect mark. The woman who walked into my bedroom that afternoon looked exactly like she always had. Small and tired, wearing one of those oversized sweaters she bought from QVC, clutching her purse like someone might snatch it away. But for the first time in my life, I looked at Maria Delgado and saw a stranger. "How are you feeling, Mom?" I asked, studying her face for signs of the deception I'd somehow missed for 3 decades. "Oh, you know, the medication makes me foggy sometimes. Did you find anything interesting in the closet?" Interesting, that was one word for it. "Just some old papers," I said, my hand instinctively moving to my back pocket, where the birth certificate waited like a loaded gun. Nothing important. She smiled that warm, familiar smile that had comforted me through skinned knees and broken hearts and college stress. The same smile she'd been using to lie to me since the day I was born. I lasted exactly 4 hours before I cracked. We were sitting at her kitchen table, the same Formica surface where I'd done homework for 12 years, eating the chicken and rice she'd made every Tuesday for as long as I could remember. Mom was telling me about her new medications, how the social worker had been so helpful, how grateful she was that I'd taken time off work to help her transition. Normal conversation, normal evening. like I wasn't sitting there with dynamite in my pocket. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Mom," I said, setting down my fork. "I need to ask you something." She looked up, those familiar brown eyes crinkling at the corners. "Of course, mija. What is it?" I pulled out the birth certificate and placed it on the table between us. The change in her face was instant. Color drained from her cheeks, her hand halfway to her mouth with a forkful of rice, frozen midair. "Where did you find that?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Your closet, along with this." I produced the adoption papers. And this. The letter in her handwriting. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The kitchen clock ticked loudly above the sink. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked at something in the desert darkness. Then Mom started crying. Not the gentle tears I'd seen when she talked about my father or her miscarriages. These were harsh, choking sobs that shook her entire body. She covered her face with her hands, and for the first time in my life, Maria Delgado looked small and fragile and utterly defeated. "I'm sorry," she whispered through her fingers. "I'm so sorry, Nora." "Sorry for what, exactly?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Cold, clinical. "Sorry for lying to me for 29 years? Sorry for stealing me from my real mother? Sorry for building my entire life on a foundation of bullshit?" She flinched at each accusation like I was slapping her. "It wasn't like that," she said, finally looking up at me. Her face was blotchy and swollen. "You don't understand. I saved you." "Saved me from what?" "From her, from Isabella." The name came out like poison. She was 16, Nora. 16 and strung out on drugs and living on the streets. She couldn't take care of herself, let alone a baby. "So you just took me?" "I was a nurse at Phoenix General. I saw girls like Isabella come through all the time, pregnant and scared and making terrible decisions." Mom wiped her nose with a paper napkin. "When Isabella went into labor, she was high, completely out of her mind. She kept saying she couldn't keep the baby, that someone else had to take it." "That someone else being you." "I was there when you were born. I was the one who cleaned you up, who made sure you were breathing properly." Isabella took one look at you and turned away. Said she never wanted to see you again. The room felt like it was tilting. But the adoption papers were signed by Isabella's mother, your grandmother, Carmen Martinez. She had power of attorney because Isabella was a minor and deemed unfit. Mom's voice grew stronger, more defensive. "It was all legal, Nora. I didn't steal you. I adopted you through proper channels." "Then why lie about it? Why make up stories about miscarriages and Roberto Delgado and—" "Because I was 42 years old and single and Mexican. And back then, that combination didn't get you approved for adoption easily. So I created a story that would work. A widow who'd lost children and found one last miracle." I stared at her, trying to process this information. Roberto Delgado never existed? He existed. He was a man I dated for 3 months in 1987. Nice man, never wanted to get married. She shrugged. "I borrowed his last name and his photos and created a history that would help me keep you." Jesus Christ, Mom. Don't take the Lord's name in vain. The normalcy of that automatic correction, something she'd been saying to me since I was 5, hit me like a physical blow. Even now, caught in the biggest lie of both our lives, she was still trying to mother me. "What about Isabella?" I asked. "My real mother, is she alive?" Mom's face went carefully blank. "I don't know." "You don't know?" "She disappeared from the hospital before you were even discharged. Carmen, your grandmother, said Isabella had run off with some boyfriend. They never heard from her again." "And Carmen, my grandmother?" "Died when you were 7. Cancer." I sat back in my chair, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. My biological mother was a drug-addicted teenager who'd disappeared. My grandmother was dead. The man I'd thought was my father never existed. "Is there anyone left?" I asked. "Anyone who actually shares my DNA?" Mom was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "There might be others." "Others?" "Carmen mentioned that Isabella had siblings, older brothers, but I never met them. And after Carmen died, I didn't see any reason to tell me I had uncles, possible cousins." I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the linoleum. "Jesus, Mom, how much of my life is a lie?" "All of it was to protect you." She stood too, her voice rising. "Do you think I wanted to lie? Do you think it was easy pretending you were biologically mine when every day someone commented on how different we looked? I did what I had to do to keep you safe and loved and isolated and cut off from any connection to my real family. I am your real family, the words came out as a shout. I'm the one who walked the floor with you when you had colic. I'm the one who taught you to read and helped with your homework and held you when boys broke your heart. Biology doesn't make a mother, Nora. Love does. She was right. And that made it so much worse. Because despite everything, the lies, the deception, the stolen identity, I knew Maria Delgado loved me, had always loved me. Maybe too much, but love built on lies isn't really love at all. It's just another kind of prison. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together the fragments of my real history. Every memory felt contaminated now. Every milestone, every family tradition, every moment of connection, all of it built on manufactured ground. But I kept coming back to one detail that didn't add up. The adoption had been legal, Mom said, proper channels. Yet she'd felt the need to create an elaborate false identity to keep me. Why? What was she so afraid of? The next morning, while Mom was at physical therapy, I drove to the Maricopa County Courthouse. I'd never done genealogy research before, but grief makes you resourceful. I started with Carmen Martinez, my supposed grandmother. If she'd died when I was 7, there would be a death certificate, an obituary, something. What I found was worse than nothing. Carmen Martinez had died in 1998, just like Mom said. But according to her obituary, she was survived by 4 children: Isabella, Miguel, Carlos, and Ana Martinez. 4 children. Isabella wasn't some tragic only child. She had 3 siblings, my aunts and uncles, people who might have taken me in, might have kept me connected to my real family, people Mom had deliberately cut me off from. The obituary listed Miguel Martinez as a local business owner. Ana Martinez worked for the school district. These weren't street addicts or criminals. They were established adults with jobs and presumably homes and the ability to care for a child. But Mom had made sure I never knew they existed. I was shaking as I drove back to her house. She was sitting at the kitchen table, working on a crossword puzzle, looking like the same devoted mother she'd always been. "How was therapy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "Good. The therapist says I'm making progress." She smiled up at me. "How was your morning?" "Educational." I sat down across from her. I went to the courthouse. Her pen stopped moving. I found Carmen's obituary, I continued. Interesting family she had. 4 kids. Not just Isabella. Mom set down her pen very carefully. Nora, Miguel, Carlos, and Ana, my uncles and aunt, the family you said didn't exist. They didn't want you. The words came out fast, defensive. When Carmen died, I reached out to them. They said they had their own problems, their own families to worry about. They didn't want some drug addict's kid disrupting their lives. You reached out to them? Of course I did. I wasn't going to keep you from family if they wanted to be involved. But something in her voice made me press harder. What exactly did you tell them? A long pause. Too long. I told them you were happy and settled, that it would be traumatic to uproot you. When I was 7, 7-year-olds form attachments, Nora. You would have been devastated to leave everything you knew. But you never gave me the choice, did you? You never even told me they existed. She stood up abruptly, walking to the sink even though there were no dishes to wash. I protected you from people who didn't want you. Or you protected yourself from people who might have taken me away. The accusation hung in the air between us like smoke. That afternoon, I found Miguel Martinez's business online. Martinez Auto Repair, established 1985. The website had a family photo. Miguel with his wife and 3 kids. All of them with the same green eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. My family. The family I'd never known I had. I called the shop. Martinez Auto Repair. This is Miguel. My throat closed up. What do you say to an uncle who doesn't know you exist? Hi, I managed. I'm looking for information about Isabella Martinez. She would have been your sister. Silence. Then, who is this? My name is Nora. I think Isabella might have been my mother. Another silence, longer this time. Then, Jesus, are you the baby? The baby. Not Isabella's baby or the child. Just the baby, like I was a family legend they'd been waiting for. You know about me? Know about you? We've been looking for you for 22 years. The world tilted sideways. Looking for me? Ever since Carmen died. She made us promise to find you someday, to make sure you were okay, but the adoption records were sealed. And the nurse who handled everything, Maria, something, she moved and changed her phone number. We hired a private investigator, but his voice trailed off. Wait, where are you calling from? Phoenix, I'm living with Maria Delgado. She adopted me. Delgado? The nurse's name was Maria Delgado? Yes. I heard him talking to someone in the background. Rapid Spanish I couldn't follow. Then he was back. We need to meet. Today. Can you come to the shop? 2 hours later, I was sitting in Miguel Martinez's office, looking at a wall covered with photos of family gatherings I'd never attended. Birthdays, graduations, weddings, Christmas mornings. 29 years of celebrations where there should have been an empty chair for me. Miguel looked exactly like an older male version of me. Same height, same eyes, same stubborn chin. His wife, Rosa, kept crying and hugging me like I'd returned from the dead. Carmen never stopped talking about you, Rosa said. She felt so guilty about the adoption, said she should have fought harder to keep you in the family. But Mom said you didn't want me, that you had your own problems. Miguel's face darkened. We never said that. We never even knew Maria Delgado had contacted us until years later, when we were going through Carmen's papers. She'd written down every conversation she'd had about you, including the calls from your adoptive mother. He handed me a manila folder. Inside were pages of Carmen's handwriting, documenting phone calls dating back to 1998. Maria Delgado called Carmen 3 times after the adoption, Miguel explained. The first time was right after Carmen signed the papers. Maria wanted to make sure no one from the family would try to contact you. She said it would be traumatic and disruptive. I read Carmen's notes, my hands shaking. Maria Delgado very insistent that family have no contact with Nora. Says child is fragile and needs stability. I explained that we are not drug addicts like Isabella, that we could provide support, but she became angry, said legal adoption gives her full rights, and family contact would only confuse the child. The second call was when you were 10, Miguel continued. Carmen had been diagnosed with cancer and wanted to see you before she died. Maria refused, said you were thriving and that introducing biological family would only cause problems. Carmen's notes from that call were heartbreaking. Begged to meet my granddaughter just once. Maria Delgado said absolutely not. Child doesn't even know she's adopted. Would be cruel to tell her now. I am dying and will never see Isabella's baby. And the third call? Right before Carmen died. She was desperate. She wanted to leave you something in her will. Money for college, family photos, Isabella's jewelry, something to connect you to where you came from. The final entry was dated just weeks before Carmen's death. Maria Delgado will not give me address or allow any inheritance for Nora. Says it would raise questions she's not ready to answer. I am leaving money in trust with Miguel to find her someday. She deserves to know her family loved her. I looked up at Miguel, tears streaming down my face. There's money? $25,000 plus interest. It's been sitting in an account for 21 years, waiting for you. $25,000, money that could have helped with college, with my wedding, with the down payment on the house David and I had been saving for. Money that Maria Delgado had known about and refused to tell me about. There's more, Rosa said gently. Isabella, we found her. My heart stopped. She's alive? She's been clean for 15 years, married with 2 kids. She lives in Tucson. I had a mother, a real, living, breathing mother who'd gotten her life together, and siblings. Half-siblings, but still, a whole family I'd been stolen from. Does she know about me? I whispered. Miguel nodded. She's been looking for you too. She got clean partly because she regretted giving you up. She wanted to prove she was worthy of being your mother again. I thought about Maria Delgado, sitting at home working on her crossword puzzle, probably wondering where I'd gone, the woman who'd raised me with such love and devotion, the woman who'd also lied to me every single day for 29 years, and stolen me from an entire family who'd been searching for me. How do you reconcile love with betrayal that deep? How do you forgive someone for loving you too much? I drove back to Mom's house in a daze. The manila folders sat on my passenger seat like evidence in a murder trial. Because that's what this was, wasn't it? The murder of my identity, my connections, my right to know where I came from. Mom was in the living room when I walked in, folding laundry on the couch. She looked up with that familiar smile, the one that used to make me feel safe and loved. Now it just made me feel sick. There you are, mija. I was getting worried. Where did you go? I sat down across from her, the folder in my lap. I met my Uncle Miguel today. Her hands stilled on the towel she was folding. I know about Carmen's calls, I continued. I know about the money. I know about Isabella being clean and looking for me. For a moment, Mom just stared at me. Then she carefully set down the towel and folded her hands in her lap. What exactly do you think you know? Her voice was calm, measured. The voice she'd used when I was a teenager making accusations about unfair rules. I know you've been lying to me about more than just my adoption. You actively kept me from my family. You turned down money that was meant for me. I protected you. The words came out sharp, cutting me off. From people who abandoned you. Do you think Miguel Martinez was sending you birthday cards all these years? Do you think any of them called to check on how you were doing? Because you told them not to. I told them the truth, that you were settled and happy and didn't need their disruption. She stood up, pacing to the window. And look how right I was. One conversation with them, and you're sitting here attacking the woman who raised you. The casual way she flipped the script, making me the villain for discovering her lies, was breathtaking. Mom, you kept me from knowing I had a family who wanted me. A family who gave you away. Carmen was dying. She wanted to meet me before. Carmen was the one who signed those adoption papers, Nora. She chose to give you to me, rather than keep you herself. If family was so important, why didn't she raise you? I stared at her, recognizing the technique, but still feeling its pull. This was what she'd always done when caught in something she couldn't defend. Shift blame, rewrite history, make me question my own perceptions. Isabella was 16 and on drugs, I said slowly. Carmen was probably in her 60s and couldn't handle raising a baby, but Miguel and Carlos and Ana had their own families, their own problems. Do you really think they wanted to take in their drug addict sister's baby? Mom turned back to me, her eyes bright with the kind of righteous anger I remembered from my teenage years. I've seen how families like that operate, Nora. They make big promises when it's convenient, then disappear when the reality hits. You never gave them the chance. I gave you a chance at a stable home with someone who would put you first, always. She sat back down, leaning forward earnestly. Do you remember being unhappy as a child? Do you remember feeling unloved or neglected or wanting for anything? And there it was, the trump card she'd been saving. Because no, I didn't remember being unhappy. I remembered feeling cherished and supported and completely secure in her love. I remembered a woman who'd attended every school play, who'd taught me to cook her grandmother's recipes, who'd sat up with me through countless childhood illnesses. I remembered being happy. That doesn't make the lies okay, I said. But my voice sounded weaker now. What lies, mija? I told you that you were wanted and loved and special. Was that a lie? You told me Roberto Delgado was my father. I told you that you had a father who would have loved you. That's true, regardless of his name. You told me you'd had miscarriages. I told you that you were my miracle baby, and you were, finding you, being chosen to raise you. That was my miracle. She was doing it again, taking each deception and reframing it as a kindness, a protection, a different kind of truth, making me feel foolish for being angry about being lied to. What about the money, Mom? The $25,000 Carmen left for me? For the first time, she looked genuinely uncomfortable. That money came with strings attached. What strings? Carmen wanted to control how it was used. College only, she said. Not for anything else. And she wanted updates on your progress. Photos, contact information. Mom shook her head. She wanted to buy her way back into your life after giving you away. She was my grandmother. She was a stranger who happened to share your DNA. I was your mother. I was the one working double shifts to pay for your school clothes and your violin lessons and your college applications. Why should some woman who'd never changed your diaper get to dictate how money was spent on you? The logic was seductive. Wasn't blood thinner than the bonds forged by daily care? Wasn't the woman who'd raised me more my mother than the teenager who'd given birth to me? But then I thought about the wall of photos in Miguel's office. All those family gatherings where there should have been a place for me. All those cousins I'd never met, who probably wondered what had happened to Isabella's baby. You made the choice for me, I said. You decided I was better off not knowing them, but it wasn't your choice to make. Of course it was. You were 7 years old. Children don't get to make decisions about their own welfare. What about when I was 18, 21, 25? When was I old enough to decide for myself? Mom was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, sadder. By then, it had been so long. How do you tell your adult daughter that her entire life has been built on stories? How do you risk losing the most important thing in your world? And there it was. The truth underneath all the justifications and reframings. She hadn't been protecting me. She'd been protecting herself. From losing me, from facing the consequences of her choices, from admitting that her love, however genuine, had been selfish from the very beginning. I need some air, I said, standing up. Nora, please, don't let these people poison you against me. I know they seem nice now, but you don't know them. You don't know what they're really after. I paused at the door. What could they possibly be after, Mom? What do I have that they could want? Her face crumpled. You. They want you. And if you choose them over me, I'll have nothing left. The naked fear in her voice almost broke me, but fear didn't excuse 29 years of lies, and need didn't give someone the right to steal another person's identity. I walked outside into the desert heat, leaving her sitting alone with her laundry and her carefully constructed version of our story. For the first time in my life, I understood that love and betrayal weren't opposites. Sometimes they were the same thing. I called David from my rental car, parked outside a Circle K in the blazing Arizona sun. Hey babe, how's the packing going? David, I need to tell you something, and it's going to sound insane. I told him everything, the birth certificate, the adoption papers, meeting Miguel, discovering Isabella was alive. I expected shock, maybe anger on my behalf, definitely support. What I got was silence. David, are you there? Yeah, I'm processing. So you're saying your mom isn't actually your mom? Biologically, no, but she raised me, so... And there's money, $25,000. Something in his tone made my stomach clench. Yes, but that's not the point. The point is that she's been lying to me my entire life about who I am. Nora, think about this rationally. Your mom is sick. She's got dementia. Maybe she's confused about what happened 30 years ago. She's not confused, David. I have the documents. I met my actual family. Your actual family? His voice sharpened. Maria raised you. She's your actual family. These people are strangers. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These strangers are my blood relatives. They've been looking for me for 20 years. And where were they when you needed braces, when you were applying to colleges, when we were planning our wedding? David's voice was getting harder, more like his father's when he talked business. It's real convenient that they show up now with money and sob stories. They didn't show up. I found them. Same difference. Look, I get that you're upset about the adoption thing, but your mom clearly did what she thought was best. And now you want to blow up our life because some mechanic claims he's your uncle. Our life, not my life, our life. This isn't about blowing up anything. This is about me finally knowing the truth about where I came from. The truth? The truth is that Maria Delgado has been your mother for 29 years. She's the one who needs you right now, not these Martinez people who couldn't be bothered to find you until it was convenient. I realized David wasn't hearing me. He was hearing a threat to the stable, predictable life we'd built together. The life where I was Maria Delgado's grateful daughter, who'd married into his nice middle-class family and fit neatly into their expectations. David, Isabella wants to meet me. My birth mother is alive and clean and has other children. I have half-siblings. Great. More people to complicate things right when your mom needs care. His sigh was audible across the phone line. Nora, I love you, but you're being naive. These people abandoned you once. What makes you think they won't do it again? They didn't abandon me. Carmen was dying, and Carmen chose to give you away instead of raising you herself. That's abandonment, no matter how you spin it. He was starting to sound like Mom. Same arguments, same logic, same insistence that my desire to know my birth family was somehow a betrayal of the people who'd raised me. I'm going to meet Isabella, I said quietly. When? Tomorrow. She's driving up from Tucson. Another long silence. Then, fine. But don't expect me to be supportive when this blows up in your face. He hung up. I sat in that parking lot for 20 minutes, watching people pump gas and buy lottery tickets and go about their normal lives, while mine disintegrated around me. Then I called my best friend, Sarah. We'd known each other since college, been each other's maid of honor, shared every major life event for the past decade. Holy shit, Nora, are you okay? Finally, someone who understood how earth-shattering this was. I don't know. I feel like I don't know who I am anymore. I can't even imagine. What are you going to do? I'm meeting my birth mother tomorrow, and there's family money that Mom kept from me, and David thinks I'm being naive, and I started crying in the Circle K parking lot like a crazy person. David said what? I repeated the conversation, and Sarah was quiet for a long time. Okay, I'm going to say something, and you're not going to like it. My heart sank. What? Maybe David has a point. Not about the money thing, that's fucked up. But about the timing. Your mom has dementia, Nora. She's vulnerable right now, and you're talking about meeting strangers and potentially turning your whole life upside down. They're not strangers, they're my family. They're people you just met, people who have their own agendas, their own version of events. What if they're not telling you the whole truth either? What could they possibly gain from lying to me? I don't know. Connection to Maria's estate? That inheritance money? Sometimes people have motivations that aren't obvious right away. I felt like I was drowning. My husband thought I was being foolish. My best friend thought I was being naive. Even my own instincts felt unreliable now. Sarah, what if I'm making a huge mistake? What if you're not? Look, I just think you should slow down. Process this with a therapist before you make any big decisions. Your mom lied to you, yes, but she also loved you. These other people might love you too, but you don't know them yet. After we hung up, I drove aimlessly through Phoenix, past the high school where I'd been valedictorian, past the hospital where I'd supposedly been born, past all the landmarks of a life that now felt like someone else's story. Everyone in my life was telling me to be cautious, to think rationally, to consider Maria's feelings and David's concerns, and the practical implications of disrupting a stable situation. No one was telling me I had the right to be angry. No one was saying that 29 years of lies was unforgivable. No one was supporting my need to finally know who I really was. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was being selfish and reckless and ungrateful. Maybe good daughters don't abandon their aging mothers for the promise of a different family. Or maybe everyone in my life was so invested in the version of me that Maria had created that they couldn't handle the possibility of me being someone else, someone who belonged somewhere else, someone who might choose differently if given the chance. That night, I lay in my childhood bed for what I knew would be the last time. Tomorrow I would meet Isabella Martinez and finally look into the eyes of the woman who'd given birth to me, and whatever I learned, whatever I decided, I would have to do it alone, because the people who claimed to love me most were the ones most afraid of who I might become if I finally knew the truth. Isabella Martinez looked exactly like me. Not similar. Not, you can see the resemblance. Exactly like me. Same height, same build, same green eyes, same stubborn chin. If you put our driver's license photos side by side, we could have been twins separated by 15 years. We met at a coffee shop in Scottsdale, neutral territory where neither of us had history. I arrived 20 minutes early and sat in my car, watching through the window as she walked in. Even her walk was familiar. Long strides, shoulders back, purposeful movement. When I finally went inside, she was sitting at a corner table, gripping a coffee cup like it might run away. She looked up when I approached, and her face crumpled. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You're so beautiful." I sat down across from my birth mother and didn't know what to say. "I dream about you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I've dreamed about you almost every night for 29 years. Sometimes you're a baby, sometimes you're grown up, but I always know it's you. I didn't know you existed until 3 days ago." The words came out harsher than I intended, but Isabella just nodded. "I know, Miguel told me. That woman, Maria, she made sure of that. That woman raised me, loved me, gave me everything. Except the truth." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of 29 lost years settling between us like a physical presence. Tell me about the day I was born, I said finally. Isabella's face went distant. I was high, cocaine, and whatever pills I could get my hands on. I'd been living on the streets for 2 months, sleeping in shelters or abandoned buildings. When the contractions started, I was terrified. Of giving birth? Of everything, of being a mother, of being responsible for someone else when I could barely take care of myself. Of my family finding out what I'd become. She wiped her eyes with a napkin. The hospital was chaos. I was screaming and crying and begging them to make it stop. And then you were born, and they put you on my chest, and you were so perfect and tiny and I knew I was going to destroy you if I kept you, just like I'd destroyed everything else I'd ever touched. The honesty was brutal, but I appreciated it more than I could say. So you gave me to Maria? Not exactly. I told the nurses I couldn't keep you, that someone else had to take you. Maria was there. She'd been assigned to me during labor. She was kind, gentle, spoke Spanish like my grandmother. When I said I couldn't be your mother, she said she could. Just like that? Just like that. She said she'd been trying to have children for years, that God had sent you to her. It felt like destiny or something. Isabella laughed bitterly. Of course, I was high as a kite, so my judgment wasn't exactly reliable. What happened after? I left the hospital before you were discharged. I couldn't stand to see you again, knowing I was giving you away. I told myself it was better for everyone if I just disappeared. But Carmen signed the adoption papers. Because I was 16 and legally a minor and completely incompetent. My mother had to clean up my mess, like she'd been doing my whole life. Isabella's voice broke. She begged me to get clean, to fight for you, but I was too scared and too selfish and too convinced that you were better off without me. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception or self-pity, but all I saw was raw, devastating honesty. When did you get clean? When you were 14, I'd been in and out of rehab a dozen times, but nothing stuck until I met someone who'd given up a child for adoption. She told me that getting clean wouldn't bring her daughter back, but it was the only way to become worthy of her daughter's forgiveness if they ever met again. So you got clean for me? I got clean for me, but you were my motivation. Every day I didn't use was a day I became a little more like the mother you deserved. The coffee shop around us felt surreal. Normal people ordering lattes and checking their phones while I sat across from the woman who'd given birth to me, finally understanding the true cost of my existence. I have other children, Isabella said quietly. Maria is 12 and Javier is 9. They know about you. They've always known they have an older sister who was adopted. I had siblings, real siblings who'd grown up knowing about me while I'd grown up thinking I was an only child. Do they want to meet me? They've been asking to meet you since they were old enough to understand what adoption meant. Isabella smiled for the first time since we'd sat down. Maria especially. She says she's tired of being the oldest. I thought about calling David to tell him about this conversation, but I already knew what he'd say. That Isabella was trying to manipulate me, that she'd abandoned me once and would do it again, that I was being sucked into a fantasy of family that would only end in heartbreak. Maybe he was right. But as I sat there looking at my birth mother's face, my face, I realized something that hit me like a physical blow. For the first time in 29 years, I wasn't pretending to be someone I wasn't. I wasn't Maria Delgado's miracle baby, grateful and compliant and determined to never cause problems. I wasn't David's perfectly stable wife who never rocked the boat. I wasn't Sarah's friend who always made sensible decisions. I was just Nora, confused and angry and desperate for truth, but finally, authentically myself. I want to meet them, I said. Maria and Javier. I want to meet my siblings. Isabella's smile was radiant. They're in the car. I wasn't sure if you'd want to see them today, but I hoped. They're here. Miguel thought it would be good for you to see the whole family, to understand what you're choosing between. What I was choosing between, as if it were that simple. As if love were a finite resource that could only be spent in one place. But maybe it was that simple. Maybe I'd been trying so hard to be grateful for the life Maria had given me that I'd never allowed myself to grieve for the life she'd taken away. Maybe it was time to stop being grateful and start being angry. Maybe it was time to choose myself for once. Bring them in, I said. Isabella walked outside, and I watched through the window as she approached a blue Honda Civic. 2 kids got out. a girl with my stubborn chin, and a boy with my green eyes, my sister and brother, my family. The family I'd been stolen from. They walked toward the coffee shop, Isabella's hands on their shoulders. And I understood something with perfect clarity. This wasn't about choosing between families. This was about choosing between truth and lies, between my authentic self and the version Maria had created, between the life I'd been given and the life I deserved. And for the first time since I'd found that birth certificate, I knew exactly what I was going to do. 6 months later, I was sitting in a lawyer's office in downtown Phoenix, watching Maria Delgado sign papers that would change both our lives forever. The assisted living facility had been a wake-up call. Mom's dementia was progressing faster than anyone had expected, and the care she needed was expensive, more expensive than her small savings account could handle. That's when I made her an offer. I would pay for her care, all of it, the best facility in Arizona, using Carmen's inheritance money. The $25,000 had grown to nearly $40,000 with interest, more than enough to ensure Mom would be comfortable and safe for years to come. But there was a condition. She had to legally acknowledge what she'd done, not publicly, not criminally, just officially. A signed statement admitting that she'd kept me from my biological family, that she'd refused inheritance money meant for me, that she'd built my entire identity on fabricated stories, the truth, on legal letterhead. I don't understand why this is necessary, she said, her hands shaking as she held the pen. The dementia made her seem smaller, more fragile, but her stubbornness remained intact. I've already told you I'm sorry. Because sorry isn't enough, I said quietly. You stole 29 years of my life, Mom. 29 years of knowing who I really was, where I came from, who my people were. An apology doesn't give that back. My lawyer, a woman named Janet, who specialized in adoption fraud, cleared her throat. Mrs. Delgado, this statement simply acknowledges the facts as they occurred. It doesn't constitute an admission of criminal wrongdoing. But it could be used against me later. By whom, I asked. I'm not pressing charges. The statute of limitations has run out on most of what you did anyway. This is just closure. Mom looked at me with those familiar brown eyes, now clouded with confusion and medication. You used to be such a sweet girl, Nora. So grateful for everything. What happened to that girl? She grew up, I said. She learned that gratitude without choice isn't gratitude at all. It's just compliance. The statement was 3 pages long. It detailed how she'd manipulated the adoption process, how she'd created false documentation about Roberto Delgado, how she'd deliberately isolated me from the Martinez family, how she'd refused inheritance money and contact with my grandmother, how she'd built an entire fictional history to keep me dependent on her version of reality. It was comprehensive, devastating, and absolutely true. She signed it. I walked out of that office with legal proof of everything I'd discovered, everything I'd suspected, everything that had been stolen from me. It felt like vindication and heartbreak in equal measure. Because here's the thing, nobody tells you about confronting family lies. Winning doesn't feel like winning. It just feels like loss. 3 days later, I moved Mom into Sunrise Manor, the nicest assisted living facility in Phoenix. Her room overlooked a garden where residents could grow vegetables and flowers. She seemed to like it, though the dementia made it hard to tell what she really understood anymore. Will you visit me? She asked as I helped her arrange her ceramic angels on the windowsill. Yes, I said, and meant it, but not as often as before. Because you're angry with me. Because I'm building a different life now. That different life included Sunday dinners at Miguel's house, where I was learning to make tamales from Rosa and teaching my 12-year-old sister Maria how to braid hair. It included regular phone calls with Isabella, who was patient with my questions and honest about her ongoing recovery. It included getting to know cousins and aunts and uncles who remembered my baby photos and had stories about my birth mother that weren't tainted by shame or lies. It also included divorce papers. David never adjusted to my new family situation, as he called it. He resented the time I spent in Phoenix, the emotional energy I invested in building relationships with the Martinez clan, the way I'd changed from the grateful, predictable wife he'd married into someone who asked difficult questions and made uncomfortable choices. You're not the same person I fell in love with, he said, during our last real conversation. No, I agreed. I'm not. Don't you want to be? God, no. The person he'd fallen in love with was Maria Delgado's creation. compliant, grateful, never too demanding, always putting others' comfort before her own truth. That person had been built on lies, and now that the foundation was gone, she couldn't exist anymore. I didn't want her to exist anymore. The real Nora was messier, more complicated, less concerned with keeping everyone happy. She had opinions about things that mattered and wasn't afraid to voice them. She had a family that included former addicts and auto mechanics, and children who called her Tia Nora, and meant it. She had a birth mother who'd made terrible mistakes, but owned them completely. She had siblings who included her in their lives, without expecting her to prove she deserved to be there. She had a grandmother who died loving her and leaving money for her education, because blood meant something, even when it was complicated. The real Nora was someone I was still getting to know, but I liked her better than Maria's version. 6 months after that conversation in the lawyer's office, I got a call from Sunrise Manor. Mom had fallen and broken her hip. The surgery had gone well, but the trauma had accelerated her cognitive decline significantly. I found her in the hospital bed, looking tiny and confused, asking for her mother who'd been dead for 30 years. "Nora," she said when she saw me. "Is that you, mija?" "Yes, Mom, it's me. I was dreaming about when you were little. You used to make me Mother's Day cards with flowers drawn in crayon. You always wrote 'Best Mom Ever' at the bottom. I remembered those cards. I'd meant every word when I wrote them. You were a good mom in a lot of ways," I said, taking her hand. "You loved me. You took care of me. You made sure I had everything I needed. But love isn't enough if it's built on lies, and care isn't enough if it comes at the cost of someone's identity." She was quiet for a long time, then she said, "I was so afraid of losing you. So you made sure I could never really have myself. I'm sorry, mija. I know I've said it before, but I really am sorry. You deserved better than what I gave you." It was the first time she'd apologized without trying to justify her actions. Maybe the dementia had stripped away her defenses, or maybe facing her own mortality had given her perspective. Either way, it felt like the closest thing to resolution I was going to get. "I know you are," I said, "and I forgive you." And I did. Not because what she'd done was forgivable, but because carrying that anger was exhausting. Because forgiveness wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. About choosing to build my life on something other than resentment. About deciding that the woman who'd stolen my identity didn't get to define who I became. Mom died 2 months later, peacefully in her sleep. I used the rest of Carmen's inheritance money to pay for a funeral where both families could say goodbye. The Delgados, who'd known her as a devoted single mother, and the Martinezes, who'd known her as the woman who'd kept their daughter from them. Isabella came to the service. So did Miguel and Rosa and my siblings. They didn't speak during the ceremony, but they sat in the back, offering silent support as I mourned the only mother I'd ever known. Even the one who'd lied to me for 29 years. After the burial, Isabella found me standing alone by the grave. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "I don't know." She was a complicated woman to love. Most mothers are. I looked at Isabella, this woman who'd given birth to me, abandoned me, found me again, and was patiently rebuilding a relationship with no guarantees, and realized something profound. Family isn't just about blood, and it isn't just about who raises you. It's about who sees you clearly and chooses to love you anyway. Maria Delgado had loved me desperately, but had never really seen me, just her idealized version of the perfect daughter she'd always wanted. Isabella barely knew me but was willing to learn, to accept whatever relationship I was comfortable with, to let me be angry and confused and still love me through it. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For letting me find my way back to you. For not making me choose between being grateful and being honest. You shouldn't have to choose between those things." "No," I agreed. "You really shouldn't." Standing there in that Phoenix cemetery, surrounded by the truth of my complicated history, I finally understood what I'd been searching for all along. Not a perfect family, not a simple story, not even justice exactly. Just the right to exist as myself, with all my messy origins and complicated loyalties intact. The right to love Maria Delgado for who she was and still be angry about what she'd taken from me. The right to build relationships with my birth family without owing them gratitude for existing. The right to be Nora Martinez Delgado. Both names, both histories, both versions of love that had shaped me. Because here's what 29 years of lies had taught me. The truth doesn't make you free. Choosing the truth makes you free. And sometimes, the most radical thing you can do is simply decide to be yourself. All of yourself. No matter how inconvenient that is for the people who prefer their version of who you should be. Even when those people love you, especially when they love you,